Hey there, and welcome to True Scary Stories. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment telling us where you're from and what time you're watching. That helps YouTube know you love creepy stories, and it'll keep sending more your way.
3 Scary True Craigslist Horror Stories. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because we upload creepy stories like this one every single week. Today, I'm sharing 3 of the most disturbing and unsettling Craigslist encounters that people have actually experienced. And I'm warning you right now, these aren't your typical bad deal stories. These are the kind of encounters that make you question whether you should ever trust an online marketplace again. So, stick around as we go through 3 true stories of Craigslist horror. And remember, stay safe out there. Let's get into it. Story 1. The Fake Apartment. The setup. Back in 2019, a young woman named Sarah was desperately searching for an apartment in Los Angeles. She was new to the city, didn't know many people, and needed a place fast. She was tired of staying with friends and wanted her own space. So, like most people her age, she turned to Craigslist. She found a listing that seemed perfect, a beautiful one-bedroom apartment in a decent neighborhood. Rent was reasonable, almost too reasonable, honestly. But the photos looked stunning. Hardwood floors, modern kitchen, big windows with tons of natural light. The listing was posted by someone named David, and his profile seemed legitimate. He had other properties listed, good reviews from previous renters. Everything checked out. Sarah texted him immediately. Within minutes, he responded. He was friendly, professional, asked her some basic questions about herself. He explained that he was currently out of the country for work, but he'd be happy to show her the place through a video tour or let her meet his property manager in person. Here's where Sarah made her first mistake. Instead of doing more research, she got excited. She'd found the perfect place, or so she thought. David sent her an address and told her to meet his property manager, a man named Marcus, at the apartment the next day at noon. The meeting. Sarah showed up to the address. It was a nice building in a nice area. She was nervous but excited. She waited outside for about 10 minutes. Then a man approached her, tall, thin, with a forced smile. He introduced himself as Marcus, the property manager. He had a key. He led her into the building, into the hallway, and they climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor. He unlocked the apartment, and Sarah walked inside. And immediately, something felt wrong. The apartment didn't look anything like the photos. The photo showed this beautiful, modern space, but the reality was different. The carpet was stained, the walls were yellowed and cracked, there were strange stains on the ceiling, the kitchen appliances looked ancient, and there was a smell, something sour and off. Sarah's heart started racing. She looked at Marcus, and his smile hadn't changed. It was still there, frozen on his face. "It's a work in progress," Marcus said, his voice flat. "David's been having some renovations done. It'll look much better soon." Sarah nodded slowly, but her instincts were screaming at her. Something was very, very wrong here. She asked Marcus a few basic questions. When would the renovations be done? What was included in the rent? But he kept giving vague answers. His responses didn't make sense, and he was standing between her and the only exit. Then Marcus asked her to follow him into the bedroom. The red flags. Sarah's survival instinct kicked in. She made an excuse. She said she had another apartment to look at, that she'd get back to him. Marcus's expression flickered for just a moment. That fake smile dropped, and then it came right back. "Are you sure?" he asked. "I was hoping we could discuss terms." Sarah felt her throat tighten. She walked toward the door, and Marcus stepped aside. As she passed him, she felt his eyes on her. Every nerve in her body was alert. She left the apartment, walked down the stairs, and once she hit the street, she didn't look back. She walked to her car, got inside, and locked the doors. Her hands were shaking. She sat there for a moment, trying to process what had just happened. Then, she did what she should have done from the beginning. She looked up the actual apartment building online. She pulled up the property management company's official website. What she found made her blood run cold. That company had no listing for that address. She called their main office and spoke to someone in their leasing department. They confirmed it. That building wasn't even owned by their company. It was owned by a different entity entirely. There was no renovation happening. There was no David. There was no Marcus working for them. Sarah had just been lured to an empty apartment by someone posing as a property manager. She immediately reported the listing to Craigslist. But here's the thing that still haunts her. She never found out what would have happened if she'd gone into that bedroom. What was Marcus planning? Was he working with others? And how many other people had he lured to that same location? The listing disappeared within hours of her report. She never found out who David really was. The phone number he used was a burner. The email was anonymous. He just vanished. But Sarah knows that if she hadn't trusted her gut, if she'd been just a little bit less cautious, she might have ended up as a very different kind of story on this channel. And there's a good chance Marcus is still out there using different names, different listings, still luring people.
Story 2. The rental scam that turned darker. The victim. In 2021, a man named James was looking for a rental home in Austin, Texas. He was relocating for a job and needed to move quickly. He had about 2 weeks to find a place and sign a lease. So he started browsing Craigslist, and that's where he found the listing. It was a beautiful 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood. The price was good. The photos showed a well-maintained home with a nice backyard. The owner, a woman named Patricia, said she was renting out the house because she'd relocated for work and was keeping the property as an investment. Everything seemed legitimate. Patricia responded quickly to his emails. She answered all of his questions. When James asked if he could schedule a walkthrough, she said yes, but she explained that she was currently out of state and couldn't meet him in person. However, she said, she could arrange for him to meet with a local representative who could show him the house and discuss lease terms. James agreed. He wasn't thrilled about not meeting the actual owner, but he was on a time crunch. He didn't think too much about it. The smooth transaction. The representative, a man named Tom, was incredibly professional. He showed James around the house, answered all his questions, and explained the lease agreement. Everything seemed in order. Tom even had a copy of the lease agreement ready, printed out, and professional looking. The only unusual thing Tom asked for was first month's rent plus a security deposit up front. He explained that Patricia needed the money quickly to cover some unexpected expenses out of state. It was a larger upfront cost than usual, but James figured it was worth it to secure the place so quickly. James, feeling confident, wrote a check for $2,400 for first month's rent and another $1,200 for the security deposit. Tom seemed genuinely appreciative. He gave James a receipt, explained when the keys would be ready, and told him he'd hear from Patricia within a few days with official lease documents. James left feeling relieved. He'd found a house. His move was going to happen on schedule. Then 3 days passed with no contact. James tried calling Tom. No answer. He tried emailing Patricia. No response. He texted the number Tom had given him. The messages showed as delivered, but got no reply. By day 5, James was panicking. He did what he should have done before writing that check. He Googled the address of the house and looked for the actual property owner. He found it. The house was owned by a family named the Hendersons. They were not Patricia. They were not renting it out on Craigslist. James' stomach dropped. He'd been scammed. The deeper discovery. He immediately called the Hendersons to explain what had happened. They were shocked and upset. They told James that they'd had multiple people show up at their house over the past few weeks, all claiming they'd paid deposits on a Craigslist rental. One woman said she'd paid over $3,000. Another couple said they'd paid $2,200. Everyone had been told they were renting from Patricia. Everyone had met with either Tom or another representative with a similar name. The Hendersons contacted the police, and the police opened an investigation. They discovered that the Craigslist account used to list the property had been created using a VPN and a fake email address. The phone numbers used by Tom and Patricia were burner phones, purchased with cash at a convenience store. Whoever was running this scam was professional. They'd stolen photos of the house from the MLS listing, cleaned them up, and reposted them. They'd created fake identities. They'd even hired someone, or were themselves that someone, to pose as a property manager and physically meet the victims at the house. But here's where the story takes a darker turn. The creepy part. James, still shaken by losing $3,600, decided to do more digging. He reached out to other victims he found online, people who'd fallen for the same scam. One of those victims was a young woman named Michelle, who'd lost $2,800. As they were comparing notes, exchanging screenshots and details, Michelle mentioned something strange. She'd been so upset about losing the money that she'd gone back to the house a few days later, just to stand outside and feel angry about it. She didn't go inside, she was just standing on the sidewalk looking at the place through the fence. And that's when a man came out of the house. A man who was not a member of the Henderson family. Michelle said she didn't recognize him, but he looked at her with this expression of cold recognition, like he knew exactly who she was and why she was there. He stared at her for a long moment. Then he went back inside the house. Michelle never reported it to the police. She was too scared. She just got in her car and left. But that image of him staring at her, like he knew, has stuck with her ever since. James asked her if she remembered what the man looked like. She described him, tall, thin, with a scar along his left cheek. James went through all the police reports and victim statements, and he found a description that matched, from a home invasion that happened in Austin about a month before the rental scam started. The home invader matched that exact description, scar on his left cheek, same height and build. Was it the same person? Was this scam being run by someone with a history of violent crimes? Or was it just a coincidence? The police never caught whoever was running the scam. The investigation went cold. James got his money back through his bank's fraud department eventually, but it took months. And Michelle still has nightmares about that man staring at her from the porch.
Story 3. The free furniture that cost everything. The Bargain Hunter. In 2020, a college student named Derek was furnishing his first apartment on a tight budget. He was browsing Craigslist in the free section because, let's face it, when you're a college student, free furniture is basically a lottery ticket. He found a post from someone named Rick, who was giving away several pieces of furniture: a couch, a dining table, bookshelves, and a bed frame. All in excellent condition, all completely free. The only catch was that the person had to pick them up themselves. Derek texted Rick immediately. Rick responded within minutes. He seemed friendly, maybe a little too friendly. He said he'd be happy to let Derek take as much as he wanted, but he'd need help loading it into Derek's truck. He offered to help with the lifting himself. Derek set up a time for Saturday at 2 p.m. at an address Rick provided. It was in a part of town Derek didn't know very well, but it seemed legitimate enough. Rick had given him a full address, not a vague location. The setup. Saturday came, and Derek drove to the address. It was an older apartment complex, kind of rundown, but not dangerous looking. Derek pulled into the parking lot and texted Rick that he was there. Rick came out of one of the ground floor apartments. A guy in his 50s, maybe 60s, with a gray beard and a friendly demeanor. He was smoking a cigarette. "You Derek?" Rick asked, smiling widely. "Yeah, that's me," Derek said, shaking his hand. Rick led Derek around the back of the complex to a storage unit. He unlocked it, and sure enough, there was the furniture. All exactly as described in the listing. Nice couch, solid wood table, everything. "Take whatever you want. If you need help loading, I got a buddy here who can help too. He's just inside. Let me go grab him." Derek started assessing what he could fit in his truck. He was excited. This was a genuine stroke of luck. As Rick went to get his buddy, Derek began moving the lighter pieces toward the door. Then Rick came back, but he wasn't alone. There were two other men with him, not one. Both looked significantly younger than Rick, and both had this sort of hardened look about them. Something about their body language made Derek immediately uncomfortable. "This is Marcus and this is Tony. They're going to help us load everything." Derek smiled nervously. "Thanks, guys." But as the men started moving the furniture, Derek noticed something odd. They were being deliberate, slow, like they were stalling. They'd pick up the couch, move it a few feet, then put it down and adjust it. Move it again. They weren't really trying to load it efficiently. They were just prolonging the process. Derek's instincts kicked in. Something wasn't right about this. He said he needed to make a phone call and stepped away to his truck, pretending to look for his phone. From a distance, he watched the three men. Rick was talking to Marcus and Tony in hushed tones. He couldn't hear what they were saying, but their body language was intense, focused, and occasionally they'd glance in Derek's direction. His heart was pounding. He made a split-second decision. He turned around, got into his truck, and started the engine. The chase. He didn't have time to think about whether he was overreacting or being paranoid. He just had an overwhelming sense of danger. He threw the truck in reverse and backed out of the parking spot quickly. Immediately, all three men looked up. Their expressions changed. Rick was no longer smiling. Derek didn't wait around to see what would happen next. He put the truck in drive and headed toward the exit of the complex. As he drove, he checked his mirror. All three men were walking quickly toward the parking lot, not running, but moving with purpose. Derek hit the gas and got out onto the main road. He didn't stop driving until he'd put a few miles between himself and that apartment complex. The investigation. Derek's hands were shaking as he pulled over. He called the non-emergency police line and reported what had happened. The officer he spoke to said it sounded like a potential robbery or carjacking setup. Get someone isolated, claim to have free stuff, then overwhelm them with multiple people and steal from them. Or worse. The officer asked for the address, and Derek gave it. The cop was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Have you checked the news?" Derek said no. The officer told him to look up that apartment complex on Google News. Derek did, and what he found made his blood run cold. 3 weeks earlier, a woman had been attacked in the parking lot of that same complex. She'd responded to a Craigslist ad for a job interview. She was lured to that location, attacked by 3 men, and robbed. She was hospitalized with serious injuries. 2 weeks ago, Another person reported a robbery at the exact same complex after responding to a Craigslist ad. Same scenario. 3 men, initial friendliness, then a sudden shift to aggression. The police had been investigating. They identified the 3 men involved. Rick, Marcus, and Tony were actually Rick Garrison, Marcus Webb, and Tony DeLuca. They had histories. Robbery, assault. One of them had served time for armed robbery. Derek almost became their 3rd victim in as many weeks. But here's the thing that keeps Derek up at night, and here's why I'm telling this story. The police brought the 3 men in for questioning, but without physical evidence of a robbery or assault against Derek specifically, they couldn't hold them long. The cases involving the woman and the other robbery victim didn't stick either. The victims were too scared to testify. The evidence was circumstantial. And the 3 men were released. They disappeared. No one knows where they went. They could have left the state, they could have changed their operation to a different city, or they could still be in Austin, still using Craigslist to lure people to secluded locations. And sometimes Derek wonders if he hadn't trusted his gut, if he had stayed just 5 more minutes to load that furniture, would he even still be here? He never did find out what Rick, Marcus, and Tony had planned for him in that storage unit, and in some ways, that's the scariest part of all. So there you have it. 3 real stories of Craigslist gone wrong. 3 situations where people were targeted by scammers, con artists, and potentially dangerous criminals, all through one website. The scary part? These stories happen all the time. And for every story that ends with someone getting away safely, there are others that don't end so well. If you're ever using Craigslist or any online marketplace, please, and I mean this, trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is. Meet people in safe public locations. Tell someone where you're going. Verify information before you commit to anything. Don't hand over money without absolute certainty. The internet is a powerful tool, but it's also a hunting ground for people with bad intentions. Stay safe out there. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories like this one. Comment down below and let me know which story freaked you out the most. And as always, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.